Thank you, Paul, and thank you to Resource Rising Stars and the hardy group that have stayed to listen to the story. Talisman, it's a relatively simple story. There's three assets. The first is the lowest one on that slide. So we have an iron ore royalty from a project called Wonmunna in the Pilbara of Western Australia. It delivers us somewhere in the region of $7 to $9 million per annum, which is the funding that we use for our exploration effort in New South Wales. The principal asset in New South Wales is a Lachlan Fold Belt, in fact Cobar Basin, base metals asset package, 6,500 square kilometres, and we have an entry-level Gawler-Creighton copper-gold exploration just over 1,000 kilometres in South Australia. Our purpose is to create value for shareholders. We are owners. The board own a significant portion of the company, and also employees own a smaller portion of the company. So we are absolutely tied into success here. Corporate overview, as Paul mentioned, Talisman has the DNA of Jubilee throughout the board and within the philosophy that we apply to how we go about doing our business. Corporately, we have 187 million shares on issue, market cap of about $40 million, cash of just under 8 million at 31 December. So we have a relatively small enterprise value, and with a royalty running at about $8 million per annum and in excess of 5-year life on that royalty, I would argue that all of our market cap is justified by the royalty itself, and investors are getting not very much for the exploration and discovery opportunity that sits within Talisman. Firstly, to Wonmunna, as I mentioned, it's an iron ore royalty. It's a 1% uncapped for the life of the operation royalty. It's a project that is owned and operated by Mineral Resources, who are doing an excellent job. It's part of their Utah Point project, which they export out through Port Hedland. MinRes are the fourth largest iron ore producer in Australia, so they are no small tiddlers. You know, they're a serious player both in the iron ore space as well as the lithium space. Wonmunna forms part of their Utah Point export hub that's doing 10 million tonnes per annum. Somewhere between 6 million tonnes per annum and 7 million tonnes per annum comes out of Wonmunna itself. Their guidance for this year is somewhere between 9.5 and 10 million tonnes. We took $7.8 million of royalty payments last financial year. We'll take something similar to that this financial year, probably a touch higher than that. As an example, the royalty paid us $2.2 million in the December quarter. So while iron ore prices stay at their current strong levels, they're not at record levels, but they're at very strong levels, we're expecting that this will continue to pay us at about the current level. As I mentioned, there's about a 5-year life in the ore reserve at Wonmunna currently, and there is a substantial resource that sits behind that ore reserve of 5 years that MinRes will bring to the balance sheet and to the table over this next period of time. Those funds fully fund our exploration work in New South Wales and South Australia. Lachlan project. I know it's a very detailed slide and there's lots of geology on it, but the Cobar Basin, we are on the right-hand side of the Cobar Basin as you look at it, on the eastern side. Major structures that run up the eastern side of that basin have led to the vast majority of the mineralisation in that Cobar Basin. So it's a highly prospective tenement package, 6,200 square kilometres, prospective for base metals, copper, lead, zinc, gold, silver as well. So we have a very significant footprint. I think we're either the largest or the second largest landholder in that basin altogether. So significant opportunity. although Talisman over the COVID year and the very wet year that followed in 2022, we didn't sit on our hands and say, woe is me. We got in the air and did very detailed VTEM, very detailed gravity work flying over the landholding. So we have an excellent data set on which the exploration is now yielding the benefits of during 2023 and the early part of 2024, because we've been able to get on the ground in this last 12 months and finalise what we've been able to generate, or at least find the source of what we've been able to generate in the geophysical surveys that happened over 2022 and 2021. So it's a systematic approach that is now starting to pay dividends. The two projects that I'll talk about in most detail, and we've made two discoveries in this last 4 or 5 months. Durnings is a project about 20 kilometres north of Condobolin, which is our base. It's a small town in New South Wales, a couple of thousand people, farming country. Durnings sits on this large mineral hill fault in that mineral hill volcanic belt. Our next door neighbours are a company called Kingston Resources, who have a processing plant just up the road from us. It's a 350,000 tonne flotation plant, 700,000 tonne per annum of leaching. They're running a re-leaching of the tailings that have accumulated there over about 5 or 6 years of mining, have another 18 months to run on that. We have at Durnings a series of IP anomalies, and IP is a geophysical technique for detecting disseminated sulfides at depth in most terrains. The picture that you see, the red and pink bits are where the chargeability of the IP lights up, and that the idea is that the IP is finding the buried sulfides, which are the source of the copper, lead, zinc, gold and silver that exists in that system. We know that because 10 kilometres to the north, IP at Kingston's Mineral Hill project, IP really lights up their ore bodies. We've drilled we've drilled 6 holes there during the November-December period. Results of that have been returned. Best result was 40 metres at 2.4% lead, 26 silver, some high-grade zones within that. 6 metres at 10% lead, 126 grams silver, 3.5 zinc, 4% copper, 0.4% copper. In a gold equivalent basis, that's running at about 10 grams per tonne over that 6 metres. The 40 metres, which that came from, runs at about 3 grams per tonne. So it's not an insignificant discovery. As I mentioned, we've drilled 6 holes and we have a number of other intersections. They weren't as good as that headline intersection in hole number 6, but we have discovered that the source of the IP, and that is those base metal mineralised sulfides. So we believe that this project a little bit further to the, I'll just go back one. So the large target that's circled in red on the right-hand side will get onto the ground in the March and June quarter and drill the initial holes into that. Never been any work on that large target, so it's absolutely a virgin target for us. In detail, you'll see some of the other intersections there. Hole 6 was obviously the highlight, but 8 and 10 also, the drilling there never reached the end of the target, so we were still in mineralisation at the bottom of those 3 holes. So we'll be doing diamond tails off the bottom of those holes again in the June quarter, most likely. The other prospect that I want to talk about, and this is the highlight project for us from a geological and from an economic standpoint, is Rip and Tear, which is about 25 kilometres north of Mineral Hill. It's about 50 kilometres from Condobolin. It's a brand new area, never had any significant work. There was originally 3 percussion holes, and just to show you how long ago that those were drilled, they were all measured in feet, and they all went to 200 feet into the ground, so about 60 metres. There's anomalous copper, anomalous copper carbonates on surface. There's lead and silver rich gosons at surface. So it has all the ingredients, and you'd say, okay, well, there's a fair chance that there might be something worthwhile here at Rip and Tear. We, in the first half of last year, did what's called a moving loop EM survey. So EM finds chargeable buried bodies. The EM survey highlighted that northern anomaly, which is about 2.5 kilometres long. We've since done a second moving loop EM survey and extended that anomaly to 3.5 kilometres long. The first two drill holes that we drilled into that were the discovery holes, hole number 2 and hole number 3. Hole number 2, 192 metres at 1.3% lead and 10 grams of silver. Hole number 3, 80 metres at 1.6% lead and 14.7 grams silver. So that really sort of sat a few people back in their chairs, the geologists, and said, well, gee, we might be onto something here. We've since drilled 12 holes there, most of which have been RC holes, and we are diamond tailing those RC holes. It has significant scale, as I mentioned. It's 3.5 kilometres long, the geophysical anomaly. We've proven the central part that's 1.6 kilometres long is all mineralised in either RC or diamond drilling, with similar numbers as we have seen in the two discovery holes. Where we are at the moment, and this is a bit of a window into that northern anomaly, which has been the main focus. As I mentioned, we've drilled 12 holes. The diamond core is sitting in the laboratory at the moment. It is mineralised, but we don't know what the grade is. We'll receive the first 2 of those diamond holes back in the middle of February and be able to inform the market exactly what things look like. My expectation is we're going to extend the depth of those intersections, the width of those intersections, probably at not dissimilar grade to what we have seen so far. There does appear to be some higher grade sections, but we'll have to see what the assay lab says about those higher grade looking things that we have seen in the diamond core. As I mentioned, it's got scale, and so from our point of view, the next 6 months are going to be spent extending the drilling out to that full 3.5 kilometre width of the northern anomaly and see if it continues to be mineralised on that target anomaly that I've highlighted on the right-hand side of the slide. Mabel Creek in South Australia now. As I mentioned, it's an entry-level IOCG, iron oxide copper gold target. Early days, we picked this up in the middle of last year. We trawled through all the ASX releases of the juniors in the quarterly, and some had no money and good projects, and they were the targets that we went and knocked on their door to see if they were willing to sell their project. We picked this one up for about $200,000 cash. Next door neighbours are Rio, FMG, BHP, looking for world-class iron oxide copper gold projects. It's in the northwestern end of that whole IOCG belt. Rio have been drilling some 1,000-metre holes on the red tenure just to the south of our blue block there. So that they certainly are looking for something with significant size, and will be on the ground there in the March quarter. This is the magnetics map, came from the Geological Survey of South Australia. So the GL Survey in South Australia have a very good handle on what the project looks like out there. Their geologists have said that these Hytaba granites, which are the pink stippled bits of rock in the middle there, and those Hytaba granites are critical to the iron oxide copper gold mineralisation, and they're present at Olympic Dam, and they're present at Prominent Hill, and they're present at Carapatina, and all the big discoveries, all the big deposits there. So they're a critical part, and the Geological Survey of South Australia have confirmed that those Hytaba granites exist on this project. Next steps for us, Aboriginal Heritage Survey will be the 18th and 20th of February, and we'll be on the ground with geophysical crews in the not too distant future after that to get gravity over that whole area. There's not any gravity on there, and in South Australia, searching undercover gravity and magnetics are the two critical data sets that you need to be able to do your drill targeting. I'm expecting drilling in the June quarter, given that we get some decent gravity anomalies associated with some of the magnetic anomalies there. So it's a watch this space kind of brief for South Australia. I don't think we're going to move the dial there in the next 3 or 4 months, but post that, when we get some drilling results, we'll see what those look like. So key investment takeaways, we have the DNA of Jubilee, that we will follow the same philosophy that Jubilee followed. We have 2 significant discoveries and we're on the ground drilling, and we're fully funded for all that drilling over the medium term. Thank you very much.